Listen up, I'm about to get dope.
What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one-armed madman. And from sunny Southern California, we've got Mr. Walty Wanders on the podcast today. Walty, thanks for coming on, man. It's a pleasure to have you.
No problem, my brother. Can you hear me okay? We got a good connection?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, let's rock and roll, man. Let's rock and roll.
Rock. So you're a moto guy. We're both moto guys. I think we're actually, man, moto's so crazy. Like I wouldn't not be surprised if we've walked past each other, rode past each other in the pits, when I was living in Southern California, it was a small world down there. So I'm surprised we never crossed paths. So how did you get into the moto industry?
Yeah, my brother. So, like most of us as kids, I was lucky enough to have a dad that was into moto. He opened up our town, Santa Barbara, California, the town's first motorcycle shop back in the day. And that was like a Triumph Norton shop. I guess it was before I was born, but he was kind of an outlaw. And so we grew up, and then Honda came along, and his partner, they ended up turning it into a Honda shop. My dad ended up going into business for himself, doing something else. But we grew up, with a connection to the Honda dealership. So we grew up racing local races. And so here in California, it was racing BMX and motocross. And then, of course, a lot of skate and surf and stuff like that. So got into it pretty much, pretty young, 5, 6 years old, probably my first bike racing by like 8, 9. And then about 16, I snapped my thumb and had to have surgery. And then I ended up becoming a singer in a punk band. And
nice.
And so that was like right out of high school for a few years. And then my buddies in my punk band was called the Boxheads. And we were just punk thrash high schoolers getting crazy. And my buddy started this band, a spinoff later called Porn Star. And it was just like a funny, cool punk rock kind of Challenge Authority name. And their band kind of sucked, but they made a t-shirt and everybody wanted one. So my buddies in the band's dad, like the light bulb went off when he created Porn Star clothing, and it blew up to some multi-million-dollar empire. And so I helped those guys with Porn Star clothing. And then we ended up being a sponsor to Moto Triple X. We figured it'd be a great fit for Moto Triple X because they're getting a lot of pushback from the industry, and we were too, as Porn Star. And the AMA tried to block us. They did actually. We had to change it to P Star, and then we had to go from Moto Triple X to X3. But when Porn Star got mismanaged, it evaporated. I ended up getting a job offer from Triple X and went to work with Triple X and helped grow them. And then when I left, they ended up pretty much kind of, stopping. And I started Moto Star Clothing after that, went back to the industry with that. And that's pretty much the snapshot of my involvement and history in moto.
When still every once in a while it happens to me, but when I see Chase Sexton, just like out of the corner of my eye real quick, I see that red 23. I think it's Kyle Lewis. We got a Kyle Lewis sighting over here.
Dude,
I still
right.
Can't shake it.
That's true, dude. I never really thought about that, but you're right. I always watch. I don't know about you, but a lot of times when I'm on YouTube, I'll get recommendations, and old Supercrosses will pop up from back in the day. Those Bubba, Ricky Reed battles, those three-way battles were so insane. And I was watching one last night, and it was like from, I don't know, maybe 06. And that was kind of, in our heyday a little bit. By that time we were in semi-trucks and big players in the industry with Triple X. And Kyle was pulling hole shots left and right on the 450. It was, I think, 05. Most of the guys were still on 2 strokes. There was like Wyndham and a handful of dudes on 4 strokes. And then like 06, I believe that's when everybody went 4 stroke.
I was right there in that area. So like I was not a good amateur racer as a kid. I was like I started racing late. I didn't get onto a racetrack for the first time until I was like 15. I started riding when I was like 4, so I was a good trail rider. And I was a small kid too. I was tall. I was like 6'2" when I was 16, but I think I only weighed like 150 pounds. So I was in that 125, 252 stroke era for a while. And then I got the 4 stroke, and I was riding a a KX 250F and a KX 252 stroke at one point in that time. And that was just a nightmare. But man, that was probably the most interesting time in moto because it really showed like who was good, who was just good on the bike, and who could adapt. A lot of guys just disappeared in that era. I rode with a lot of guys that were really good on 125s, and then you got them on the 4-stroke, and they just couldn't do anything.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because last night it kind of dawned on me as I was watching, because I think I watched one race and it was Bubba, Reed, and Carmichael. They're all on 2-strokes. Bubba on the Cowie, Ricky on the Suzuki, and Reed on the Yami. And you could just see like how the bike's inertia wasn't there. I mean, it was so light, and you really had to, use a lot of body English to get. Then the next year when they all surfaced at A1 on 4-strokes, if you watch that first race, A1, and it's funny because you can just see like the approach into the whoops had to be way more precise. Like you'd have to set up for it because the bike was just so much more, it was just a tank compared to a 2-stroke. Yeah. So it was funny to watch these guys, like you said, adapt. And if you look at that early rate, like that season where they adjusted to the 4-stroke, you can just tell how everything started to change in terms of how you're going to ride the bike. And it really was almost like you had to slow down to go fast. It was really,
I never learned how to ride a 4-stroke correctly. Like I kind of got off the rails there in my story. I started racing A class in like 2006. I needed to put on like 20 pounds and get onto the 250F, but I never really learned how to ride the thing correctly. I just rode it wide open like a 125 feather, and I went through clutches like crazy on that dang thing. But
yeah, well, I think most guys did. I mean, even I bet you if you talk to the pros when they first got on that bike, they were trying to continue to ride the thing like a 2-stroke, Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I should have. My plan was to move to off road. I was gonna, get a 450 because once I gained some weight, racing kids. Washougal was my track. Like at one point, I thought it was possible that I could maybe qualify at Washougal. That was my track. But man, you put a 140-pound kid on a YZ250F next to me on Horsepower Hill, and they were just leaving me in the dust. But at the time, it was still just so tough to get into 4. And racing's changed a lot since then. Like people have gotten older. Back then, I think in 2006, I must have been 25-ish, something like that. And nobody was looking at, I mean, you were Moto Triple X, but you guys weren't looking at 25-year-olds back then. It's like, you're 25 and you haven't qualified yet. You're done. Now things are a little bit different where like people are racing into their 20s, and it's interesting to see these guys hanging back in the 250 class. Cause I always felt more comfortable on a 250. Everybody go get a 450. It's easier. You'll do better. You're going to have an easier time qualifying, less work on the bike, the whole works. But I get on the thing and I just didn't feel comfortable on it.
Well, the sport is clearly elevated. I mean, point in case is this. Let's take freestyle. Freestyle back in the heyday, Triple X, how we were, before I came along Triple X a year or two after they started their race team. But it all started, Kurt Haller and I was the main shot caller at Triple X, and he was a snowboard filmer. He was doing some snowboard movies, and it was really underground, not a lot of money in it. And then Jordan Burns, the drummer of Strung Out, and Smelly Eric, the drummer of No Effects, which was a local band here in Santa Barbara.
Oh, yeah. I know what No Effects.
And they approached Kurt Haller because they knew him from the snowboard industry, I guess. And they said, hey, dude, there's this new thing blowing up. It's Moto, and we should do a movie, and we need a filmer and whatever. So they did Moto Triple X1, and it went crazy. The timing was just perfect. Yeah. And so, freestyle was kind of born through those early Crusties and Triple X and Terra Firma, and then a lot of those early movies that showed you kind of the chaos that went along with moto. Because anybody that rides moto has a screw loose. Let's just be honest, right? You got to have a little bit of a screw loose to ride a motorcycle, right? Our parents warn us about it. It's dangerous. We know it. We love it. It is what it is. But freestyle elevated, and then the holy grail is the backflip. Nobody was willing to try it because we didn't really have foam pits, and even if you did, they weren't available to try to stick it at a contest. So when Hart kind of pulled that step up jump, just throwing a flip, got the bike to rotate and land, even though he didn't ride away, it's kind of opened the door for everything. Like with FMX went crazy, X Games, gravity games. But since then, it's kind of died down because the tricks are just like, there's really not a whole lot further you can take it without killing yourself, which a lot of the riders started to do. And it was kind of like everything has a shelf life anyway. So that's kind of what I see with the moto industry right now, because it's all spawned from the track. It's all spawned from Jeremy's Knack Knack. Is really, if you chase it even further back. And so what I'm seeing out of the industry now is it's kind of hitting this plateau, which is why I think the industry itself, I think a lot of it comes back to the crisis, because when we had to go to empty stadiums and then they were holding up the series with PPP loans, that's forgivable money that now our taxes pay for. A lot of companies, continue to operate with free money from the government. And so now with the sport, it's kind of twofold. One is the sport is elevating to the point now where the bikes are so fast. The programs that the riders are put into now are so refined, such a manufactured machine, where back in the day you relied on natural talent. Maybe you had, a decent team and bike, but you had nothing like these riders are getting today. And then the equipment with data and dyno and all the testing that goes on. I mean, it's just now, it's almost to that point where it can't tolerate a whole lot more other than going electric moto, which would be, I think, disastrous personally, because who wants to see a gate drop with remote, electric bikes? The sound, the smell is part of the deal. And so I see the industry at this breaking point. I believe, and I wouldn't be surprised if Ricky himself somehow is involved with the organization trying to usher in like playoffs and make it mainstream and blah, blah, blah. But I think we're at a point, like a turning point, because the sport is super elevated. It's becoming more dangerous because there's so much more now basically at risk. And, you got to risk so much more. The bikes are just so powerful to try to keep them inside a supercross track. And it's crazy. You got to be precision. You got to put that bike down, spot your landings perfect. And so, it's kind of almost like freestyle in the sense we don't see X Games and gravity games anymore. It's basically a carnival show or a pit party attraction with freestyle, where it used to be massive multi-million-dollar industry. And it was something that mainstream motorsports didn't really want, because it promoted kind of the alter ego that a lot of us get to display when we're on our moto.
Degeneracy.
Right.
Like a degeneracy.
Well, I mean, even back in the day when my dad tried to open this Santa Barbara's first motorcycle shop, they tried to block him from doing it because they didn't want a motorcycle shop in Santa Barbara. They thought it would be like, bad boy club to town. And so it's just always kind of had that. So, unfortunately, the industry doesn't see that's part of its market appeal, and it won't be mainstream. It has to be a niche market, but it's a marketplace nevertheless, but they're completely trying to water it down. And so what I'm seeing now is that potentially, and I could be wrong, this is just my take on it from my industry experiences and time in the sport, and just, all my experience combined really with economics and business and moto, is I think we're hitting this point where if SMX doesn't work and play, they didn't have this big idea like they should probably call it SMX and do playoffs. They did it out of necessity, because after the empty stadium series, and now we got to start making money again. There's no PPP to hold us up anymore. We have to they had to do a reboot. And so this was part of this brainchild of somebody. Maybe Ricky was involved, thinking playoffs. Now, maybe I'm wrong. We haven't seen the playoffs happen yet. There's probably something there. It might be the future of the sport. All I know is they're sugarcoating it in a sense where I believe this is out of self-preservation, not out of innovation. I mean, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. It's probably a little of both. And I don't know, dude.
So, yeah. So the way I've looked at the deal is when I was racing amateur, I was racing AMP GFI North, which is one of the biggest series in California. We're talking millions and millions of dollars worth of motorhomes going on. And we had free money. You know, this is pre-2008, so we hadn't had the housing crash yet. I think that the moto industry really killed itself when they allowed Yamaha to do whatever the fuck they wanted to bring that four-stroke in. They looked at that and said, okay, look, we've got all these environmentalists up our ass about everything we're doing. Let's throw them a bone. We'll give them this four-stroke, and then we're going to be good. They're going to leave us alone now. All they want is these two strokes gone. So they let the Yamaha do whatever they wanted instead of going, all right, look, guys, this is a new thing. We never thought that this technology was going to be possible. So we need to take a look and see approach to this. And I think that they probably should have downgraded the CCs to like 350, 400 to make it competitive with a YZ250 or a KX250. That way you could have just, still had your races. When they moved to four strokes, they made it so much more expensive for everyone. Now, as an amateur, you've got to own a four stroke. Bike's another couple grand. Parts are going to be more expensive. You got to have, a couple bikes still. So now you've got free money again after 2008, and they were on life support. And then, like you said, nail in the coffin, pandemic.
That's a good point. I mean, it's really multi-layered because, having heard you say that, one of the things that comes to mind is, it's really now a rich man's sport. And, it is. Back in the day when it was a two-stroke era, it was easier to get your hands on bikes, more affordable to buy them and maintain them and make them competitive. And you could be just some backyard, kid from rural Alabama and all of a sudden start lighting it up and maybe show up at some regionals and smokes. If you had talent, you would probably end up, getting a deal and being able to, make your way into the pro series. But, now it takes so much money. I mean, it's insane. So it's now like a rich man's sport. And that's why a lot of times, like even with Brian Deegan was an early Triple X rider who was just pissed off, angsty kid. He had a horrible racing career other than his one Supercross win where he gross rode the bike. I mean, that was another key moment in moto hit.
Smartest thing he's ever done.
Well, yeah, and it was more luck than anything else. He probably, didn't know what I know he wanted to do that. And that's something that he had talked about if he ever found himself winning, he would do. And he, in fact, did. But I don't know if he understood the magnitude that it was going to end up having. I mean, we got a lot of fines at Triple X for him doing that. And the fans all sent him money and paid for that fine, which was pretty cool. But like with Danger Boy, I mean, that's kind of the way these kids come in now is unless you have a family with unlimited resources, and you turn enough heads early on to maybe get the support needed to be ushered into the industry, because it could have been a different story with Deegan. I'm not saying he wouldn't have made it, but I don't think he would have made it as easy if his dad wasn't Brian Deegan. No. And
it's money. I mean, the money is a big deal right now. When I was, I guess 22, I bought a brand new pickup and a brand new dirt bike. I paid $5,200 for the dirt bike. It was an 06 KX250F. I got it for cost, and I paid $23,000 for my brand new pickup. Now, I mean, my buddy just bought a brand new pickup. He wouldn't even tell me how much he paid for it. He goes, I just can't tell you. I know he paid over $100,000 for it.
Insane.
And you want a house to put that bike in the pickup in? I mean, there's another $400,000.
Yeah, and that's like with my other channel, my Scott Walters report, where I talk about the inflation, the housing bubble, like all the things. the car bubble, repos spiking, U.S. savings rate at an all-time low, U.S. debt, credit card debt at an all-time high. People are financing this whole casino climate that was born out of stimulus, this big money dump. And so these car payments, the average car payment, a truck in this case, is like $1,000 a month. I forgot, it was a high percent. Can you imagine paying $1,000 a month for your car payment? Can you imagine paying I can go sell you a house in many parts of the country, a decent house for $100 grand.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even, it's insanity to me. For me, I'm not against going out and I'm just a cash guy. I'm like cash. Like, I'm not going to finance anything unless I'm getting smoking rate and I came in swinging with a big down where my cost to carry is really low, so yeah, I mean, it's insane to me to think about. There's car bubbles popping, repos spiking. I got people on my other shows. Tow Truck Terry's like, dude, you wouldn't believe it. I'm just getting buried in repos right now. And
commercial real estate,
empty. Of course, the crisis all, just demolished that. No, but it's like the elephant in the room, or it's just like being swept under the rug. Nobody talk about it. It makes perfect sense when you send people home, lock them at home, and they leave their offices and you turn them into remote workers. What do you think is going to happen to commercial? Nothing good. Nope. Nothing good. We're seeing that. Yeah.
And you started telling, and when you told people that 6 months ago, you're crazy. The new economy is going to be at home gig work. It's all Zoom. It's going to be the Zoom class now. No.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just some dinosaur. I just know the law of averages. Historical data shows us if we chase, recessionary levels of downturns throughout recorded history, every single time we exhibited the behavior that our economy just exhibited, they've in fact popped. So this, everybody wants to say this time is different with usually the housing market, because it's the biggest asset class in the world capable of delivering a knockout blow to the U.S. economy, and then the U.S. economy being the, world's reserve currency holder, it'll have a global ripple effect if we go into recession. But we've always had recessions. We've always had booms and busts. But this one was really alarming because of the size of the boom and the artificial nature, the unorganic growth that, was created. Then we have the social and political component that is, with smash and grab robberies to defund the police to, social, let me breathe, BLM. I mean, everything's gone completely sideways in this thing. It's almost like distractions to keep you looking over here to ignore this.
Look at the weather balloon.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But
it's China. They've got a balloon.
Yeah. So for me, I don't know. I guess it's just my nature because I grew up as a punker, and then with Triple X. I mean, I've just always had to deal with a lot of pushback, or that's just kind of my nature. Like, I'm a straight edge, clean cut guy now. Like, I've managed to bridge the gap from that guy into an adult. But I mean, it's still, you can't change the stripes on a zebra. It's just still part of my chemical makeup, the fabric of my being. If I see something that doesn't pass the smell test, for me, I should be able to voice my opinion, and I clearly do that every chance I get, and so like with Moto, I just, and that's what people always want. They always want a shock jock. We want shock value. If it bleeds, it leads. Like, we want that, but we also want somebody actually, giving us a take in a way maybe that we've thought and just haven't heard somebody say it in a way that's cool, and not just going for clicks and ratings. It's actually like, well, it's kind of true. And so it's been pretty cool to find out, like, guys like you, and there's plenty of people out there that are thinking this way, just afraid to speak up because we've seen this whole cancel culture, right?
Yeah. I never really got into like moto media until I started the podcast. I'd turn on the race. I've watched every race but I never really got into, I'm not going to listen to the shows, and what do I need that for? But what it does is it kind of puts blinders on you, where you're just hearing, Ricky and whoever talk, and you don't really look at the problems and think about the problems. And it takes, an insider who is someone like you, or people like me, even lesser degree me, because I've been out of it for so long. But you need somebody to point out, like, hey, this isn't right. And when you sit back and you start thinking about it, you go, yeah, this is not right. You know, a few years ago, if you would ask me how racing's going, I'd say, well, there's less people in the stands, but I think we're in a good position still once the economy turns back around. Now, I don't think so. Like you were saying earlier with electric bikes, I think they're going to do the exact same thing with the electric bikes as they did with the YZM 400. Do whatever you want, have a blast, make it as powerful as you possibly can, and just get it on the line. We don't care what you do. Just get it on the line so we can get these environmentalists off our backs, which I don't think is going to work.
Yeah, I
either.
mean, nothing would shock me, I think, at this point, because what I see is what you see. I see attendance down. I see a lot of Wall Street having a bigger presence in moto than they ever have. And I see this whole SMX is not something that was really, I don't think if it was for the crisis, we would have SMX. If I think COVID,
I agree.
If the crisis had never came along, I think we still have indoors, outdoors, and some off-season rounds, which is the way it should be. And you know, like I always talk, when I launched MotoStar, it was in the last recession, and I had to really go scratch and claw my way into the industry. When I launched MotoStar, it was kind of interesting. At that time, we were doing a lot of online gaming around like MX Reflex and some of the Moto games, and so I did a virtual team with MotoStar, and I made like this. There's a lot of tournaments and stuff that were going on around the game, Moto gaming and online gaming in the Moto industry with PlayStation, and so I launched MotoStar initially there, and then I did some shirts, and then one of the guys is like, hey, I got this buddy of mine. He's doing lights this season. He doesn't have any sponsors, so I got him to rep the MotoStar, and I went to A1 and got some pictures and built a big social media presence, like with the brand to give it this illusion of being bigger than it was. And then I attracted Rock River Yamaha and got on the side of their semi and their bikes with like Ben LeMay, and then Zach Osborne was actually there.
I got a great Zach Osborne story.
Yeah. So I guess my point was that, shit, what was my point?
Sorry.
That's all good. But like that's what it was. So in the last great recession, the 2008 era, I came into the industry with MotoStar, and it was really tricky. And I broke into the industry with that. And then I ended up I lost a strategic partner, and then I ended up getting into real estate. And so I kind of put MotoStar on the back burner, where it currently lives. I think not for the crisis. It's like, this was pretty much something that came out of crisis driven. I just don't believe this would have happened other than crisis. Now, it could have been coming. At some point it was coming. We probably was going to see the organization forced to revamp itself due to self-preservation or financial woes. But I think the crisis is what really ushered in what we're seeing now. And then with the agenda, with leadership now pushing for like renewable energy and all this baloney, dude. Did you hear the latest one, dude?
Scams.
How about this one? They want to try to control the sun's rays now. They want to.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, like are you think God's going to dig that? You think Mother Nature's going to dig that if you start doing chemtrails? And
I'm an energy guy.
Yeah, chemtrails.
I'm an energy guy. Like half of this podcast is like centered around energy and climate, so I can just go crazy on this stuff. It drives me absolutely, as a guy who like built power lines and understands how our grid operates. These people are insane. They want to put us like back into a hunter-gatherer stage. It's a depopulation movement, right? Essentially. They want less people. They want enough to where they can still have a civilization. They want to be able to fly to Rome and go to a nice restaurant. They don't want to, have to cook for themselves, but they need to get rid of a whole lot of us. The best way to do that is control the resources and tell them that they're dying. I've been, for the last like 2 days or 3 days, I've been bookmarking every news. I have like an app on my iPad where news comes up. every time something related to climate change comes up, I've been bookmarking it. And it's, dude, 5, 10, 15 different stories about how hot it is in Death Valley. It's like, it's fucking Death Valley, man.
Right.
They act like it's never been hot before.
Yeah.
They act like it's never been hot before.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, just like Moto, just like freestyle, everything has a shelf life. So, you know, unfortunately, the planet Earth does too. Now, the realities are, this is like you said, yeah, the weather patterns are getting more extreme, but we've also, like you said, overpopulated the Earth. Now, some World Economic Forum probably thinks that they know what's best for you and me. And, you know, who knows, maybe some like virus could be ushered in and we could thin out some of the population that are no longer productive to population, the elderly, and we could thin some people out that are sponging up, you know, Social Security and whatever else. But I mean, the truth is somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of people that think possibly that was in fact the case. With the crisis, is this was ushered in to thin out the population? Who knows? But the realities are, like you said, with climate change, yeah, I mean, weather patterns are changing. I don't think there's a whole lot. You can't mess with Mother Nature. It's going to do what it's going to do.
They lie with statistics. They use statistics to lie. What really is happening is the colder areas are getting a little bit warmer and the warmer areas are going to stay about the same. Our storms are going to get a little bit more intense, but there's going to be a lot less of them. They do weird things where like they'll tell us, oh, our temperature is higher than it's been in the last, you know, thousands of years, whatever. But what they do is they go back in time and they go, well, we've got this little warming period and this medieval colding period. Let's just get rid of those, throw them out, and we'll make this big hockey stick graph now. So it's all deception. Here's a good question for you. How did you see through this shit? Because from what I can tell, you were a real estate guy in 2008, and it sounds like you might have got burned a little bit like a lot of people did. But a lot of people didn't see through this shit. Like, they just went and got a different... I know a lot of real estate agents or loan officers who went and bartended for a couple of years and then went right back into the industry like nothing happened. And they're still playing the same game, taking listings that are way too high, promising to sell things that they know they can't. You know, that's happening a lot up here right now.
The light bulb really went off for me is, so I, like the rest of us, I'm living my life, doing my thing. And all of a sudden I hear lockdown orders. And it was like, you know, everything changed overnight. And then I got news that real estate agents now have been deemed essential. You guys are essential because during lockdowns, you know, they needed to keep, you know, the country running, world actually going. So that was the weirdest thing about this. Was a global lockdown. It wasn't like we locked down a state or a city. Or the US. It was the globe. That's not good. But I was like, okay, so you're an essential worker. And I didn't like being deemed an essential worker. I thought that should be reserved for like dude at my grocery store at the gas station, like essentials. But as to keep the housing market from crashing, they needed some movement. So they made agents essential, but we had to follow protocol. No open houses to the public, only one-on-one showings or virtual showings, and, you know, gloves and sanitizers and this and that and the other. But at that time, we didn't really know this, how serious the virus was, how deadly. And so a lot of people were still very freaked out about even open their door to let me come through their house to show it to anybody. So we stifled inventory, then we dropped rates in order to stimulate movement in the economy. And then so upward pressure got placed on the industry. My phone started ringing off the hook with mainly people searching the internet, where it used to be pre-COVID, maybe 10% of the calls or people I worked with came through internet leads. You know, that most of them, your sphere of influence where you work, whether it's referrals, mailers, however you're getting business, social media, it all came through Realtor and Zillow. And so anyway, I was like, this isn't normal. Like, this is the ungodly amount of calls. It's dominating my calls now, and people begging and standing in line and overpaying and waiving contingencies and bidding. Even in the last bubble, 08 era, I never saw overpaying for real estate and waiving contingencies, inspections, not knowing the health of the house, just roll a full roll of the dice. So FOMO came in, and it was herd mentality. I'm like, these people are getting, just this is herd mentality, and it's unorganic, it's not natural. So the government, when the market started to exhibit that type of behavior, they should have risen rates right then to cool this down, because if we lose the housing market, we're going to lose everything. And if we exhibit bubble behavior, history tells us it crashes, it pops when you do this to the markets. We need to stop. They did it. Stayed in their basements, ignored it. And so I had this moment of clarity. I said, I don't care if I have financial gain and this is like all great, I'm important and essential and make it all. I don't care, because I lived through 2008, bought towards the top of that bubble, which this one makes last bubble look like a warm up, like kitty.
This is the end of the everything.
So I was like, you know what? And I saw some other YouTuber running their mouth. I'm like, I'm not afraid to run my mouth. I'm going to run my mouth on YouTube. And then I just one day, I'm running my mouth for a month maybe on YouTube, and then one video goes bonkers, and this launches my channel. Next thing you know, I'm thrusted into the spotlight. And so then I felt this gravitational pull to continue on. And so, yeah, I mean, now it's kind of less polarizing topic. And it was kind of funny because same thing with the industry, at the moto industry, what I think it was the Deegan bike claim thing that went on at Loretta's caused me to turn the camera on some channel that I wasn't really using as a secondary channel, just that I used for, just random personal stuff. And I ran my mouth about that bike claims thing with Deegs. And how I said, basically, this is all about their YouTube channel is what it circles back to. I mean, they have a massive he's making way more money off of YouTube than he's making in the industry. It would appear, based on my knowledge of AdSense and the way YouTube pays out, based on their views, they're getting, making a lot of money. And it is multi-layered, but so yeah, I mean, I just kind of had that aha moment. I didn't pass the smell test for me, this whole crisis thing. I knew that there's just some BS. And then, I mean, I could go on and on and on with the election and just so much stuff that I was like, you know what, screw this. And I've been totally censored myself. Like, I've been copyright claimed. Now anytime I upload a video, it goes through a pretty massive YouTube check. They check my whole thing before it posts, and sometimes I'll get like, YouTube won't run ads, it'll be all ad suitability, not good. So I mean, there's clear censorship going on.
Yeah, they want to keep you in that box where they're going to say, hey, look, we let you go to this level, to this line, we'll let you go down to the 10-yard line with whatever video you got popular. Good for you. Stay in that area.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go over that area, we're not going to pay you, but we'll pay you pretty good to stay in this area.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because what I've seen is, luckily for my real estate channel, I have an agent who I get a lot of offers for paid promotion because it grew pretty big. Like about a year ago, prior to interest rate hikes, it was pulling, pretty significant revenues, and I get a lot of offers from companies, but it was all this, I didn't have time to negotiate, and this is what I want, and then have them approve my piece that I produce to promote their product. I use a phone for everything. It's not like I just point and shoot kind of guy. I'm not doing a lot of editing, which of course I get tons of offers for that as well. And sometimes I consider like, I got to probably step up my production value, but part of the allure of my channel was
your editing on the Walty Wanders channel is amazing. I love it.
Considering I just use a phone, right?
Yeah, no, it's great. I use an iPad for everything. It's amazing what you can do.
Yeah, no.
This whole podcast runs on an iPad essentially. But no, your edits are great. I love them. The cutaways and back in the day.
Yeah, dude.
No, it's great.
Thank you.
I think it's great. I love it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy. And then so with YouTube, the real estate channel, I have an agent now that just handles everything. They're like, hey, Scott, there's a company, and they're all pre-screened. They handle all the contracts and everything. So I got a new partner, Noble Gold Investments, who I believe, like, I own gold, and I believe, it's a good idea to diversify your money. Don't have it all sitting in a bank or all in one place, spread it around a little bit. And precious metals has been around since the beginning of time. So I think there's nothing wrong. My dad owned it. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do a deal with them. And so they've been really good to me. They've really been really good. I'm going on my 3rd month with Noble Gold, and their compensation package is awesome. Like, I'll probably just remain exclusive to them at this point, because I don't really like to run paid promotion on YouTube too much, because a lot of people think you're selling out. So I like to stick with one company, a company that I actually believe in, and I believe that that should be the deal.
And people should own gold. Like, I'm all for people owning gold. I read a story a couple weeks ago on Zero Hedge. It was this couple. They were in their mid-20s. They'd just gotten married, and they had taken over like a grandfather's house or something like that. And they're cleaning it out, and they find a box in the attic, and they open it up, and oh my God, there's $50,000 in here. We're rich. Oh my God, look at how lucky we are. And they're just glowing. And it's like, dude, I hate to tell you this, but your grandfather's a fucking moron. If he would have bought gold with that $50,000, look at how much money you'd have. Like, people got to get their money out of cash for the most part.
It's funny because, I'm heavier in cash than anything. Well, no, I'm heavier in real estate than anything, but cash is what I'm second heaviest in. And I think, it's good to have cash reserves. You want to be liquid, because you need to be able to pay your bills for, like that was when the crisis hit. I was in a unique position to run my mouth on YouTube and sacrifice a sale, because I knew I had enough money to at least hold myself up for a year without income. And so that was pretty nice. And so, I think cash is king, but in this new crypto and digital and bank failure and recession environment, I think, there's always been a flight to gold in recessions, not necessarily to increase wealth. It's just to preserve wealth. It's a wealth preservation tool more than anything else.
It's a better store of value than cash,
right?
Essentially,
exactly.
So, what do you think? I'm a Bitcoiner. I own some Bitcoin. I'm pretty well diversified. I've got gold, silver, paper gold, and silver. I'm in cash ETFs. I've got a lot of cash right now, because we're in like a wait and see period. We're still like, are we going to crash? Are they going to raise interest? I even heard, Trump did a town hall a couple weeks ago. He goes, we gotta raise interest rates. The interest rates or lower interest rates. They're out of control. And it's like, man, he bugs me when he does that, because he should know that the interest rates need to go up.
Well, he's a smarter guy than us, I believe, at least from a business standpoint. But he's also a politician, so he's trying to find his way back to office. So we got to kind of understand Trump's got to do what he's got to do in order to achieve his goal of running the country again. We didn't realize how good we had it until he was gone, because he was just a shrewd negotiator and a businessman, and he wasn't a politician. He was a celebrity. And so he actually, I believe, did a pretty good job. And in retrospect, in terms of his replacement, he was, the lesser of two evils for sure. So, it's kind of funny, but I think for me personally, I'm kind of the sense that we've got a lot to contend with in this go around. Everything's changed. And so if we fail this time, we're going to see another bailout, a lot of bailouts be rolled out. And we're already seeing there's too much going on right now. I think we'll be headed towards like a completely new monetary system if this system fails this time. And I think it's not going to be like 08 at all. It's going to be much different, potentially worse.
It's weird, because in 08, like, I was a bartender in Northern California, and there was not much going on, and me and all my friends were out of work. There was blood on the streets. People were hurting. When I go out here in the Treasure Valley, it's still boomtown around here, and I'm still waiting for the blood in the streets, essentially.
Well, you're right. I mean, that's why I think I love finding myself. Moto's my hobby. I love it. And I got a bunch of experience in the industry and I'm a fan and I watch it religiously for many years. And so that's fun to report on the moto industry. But as a grown up now that had to transition and raise kids and do all that and then pay my own bills and do that kind of thing with my real estate channel or economics awareness channel is, we can really monitor the health and the fitness of the housing market. That's the biggest asset class in the world. That's why it attracts so many investors, foreign and domestic alike. This boom attracted more than ever witnessed in human history, but it became a casino climate. People were consumed with dumping their money into Webull, Robinhood, Bitcoin, real estate, just invest. And we saw this in the Great Depression era from the studies that I've done where people started buying stocks on margin and financing everything. And so, and then it imploded. So this one, I believe, we have to monitor the health and the fitness of the U.S. housing market. Now, we had run-ups occur across the nation. Some areas were boom towns, like where Boise, like where you're at now. Yeah. And they're still out there building. And it was kind of a game of musical chairs because in a low interest rate environment, it was super easy to build some spec homes, some tour units, pre-sell them, make people wait for their house. And that's insane. And so now a lot of these areas that had extreme run-ups due to migration, a lot of outward and inward migration occurred, and some areas attracted a lot of Californians to Texas or Boise or wherever the case may be, Nashville, Florida. Got a lot of New Yorkers. And then so now we're seeing kind of this reverse course. And it's kind of this two-headed monster because you have a risen interest rate environment with runaway inflation and outward migration and the run-ups. A lot of people got the wealth effect because like even you bought in 15, you look at your house, you're like, holy crap, my house has doubled. I'm rich. I'm going to go buy some crap. I feel rich. And it was the wealth effect, unrealized wealth, rich on paper. And so there's a lot of things from like as a trained salesman, I look at the psychology of people and the psychology of sales. I always say on my show, once I sell you a house, every time it becomes all about the house. You're tied to that thing every week and you're down at Home Depot, getting a can of paint and a new doorknob and some flour. And so people put so much pressure to buy the house in this bubble. The last thing they want to do is give up the house. But we're seeing some areas, that's where I was kind of going. The usual suspects that did this in the last bubble, because there's land available to build on, Vegas, Phoenix, Austin, even Boise. There's a lot of areas now that are registering declines. So real estate's local. All areas behave differently. Some will be recession insulated, but none are recession proof. So I think what you'll see is some areas get hit first. Some areas will get hit last. Some areas will get hit harder. It just all depends on what their local wage growth was in that area. Does it support the home cost? Is your cost to own cheaper than your cost to rent? If there's certain schematics we look at to see, okay, if I'm buying in this area, what makes the most sense? Like, what's this area doing? Are they stuck on market showing price reductions? Are they recording declines? Is my cost to own within their property's rent range? There's certain things that I like to look at. But I guess to sum it up, everything revolves around the U.S. housing market. If we lose it, we will lose everything. We will be back in another recession. Then it's up to see what leadership does in terms of bailouts. And in previous bubble, the most recent bubble, the biggest housing crash to date until this bubble came along and now threatens to exceed it, is we did bailouts in 08, the Obama-backed loan modification program where homeowners could modify their mortgages. It didn't work. We had a foreclosure wave anyway, and a big recession came. So, this would be the first time in history if we can have a soft landing, especially after overheating the biggest asset class in the world, the U.S. housing market.
It's a scary prospect.
And I don't want to scare people.
When you're looking at, no, it's not like you should be scared of it. You need to be aware of it because when you're aware, like a lot of people lost a lot of money in the Great Depression, but a lot of people made a lot of money in the Great Depression.
Absolutely.
And it was the people who were paying attention that made money.
And like you,
and
yeah. And like you said, bro, I'm sorry because I got to jump in because the brain starts firing. Is that you asked
Go.
me like you must have went through some crap. I did in '08. I bought near the height and I had to dump a house on a short sale, and I didn't understand booms and busts. I'd never lived through a bust cycle as a grown. My parents did, but I just don't remember it.
Yeah.
You don't remember it when you're not paying the bills, and so I had this euphoric recall of what I went through in '08. And I pulled off a successful short sale. I was just a young guy in Moto with a young family. And, I remember it got a little tight for me. I didn't have to lose the house. I was able to do a successful short sale, but it was still sleepless nights and painful because I put so much pressure to buy the house. It was like the house. Then all of a sudden we can't keep the house. We got to dump the house. And my wife at the time, she didn't understand. She's like, "Oh, everything will be okay." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I'm gonna have to dump the house." And so, until you live through that kind of scenario, you don't understand. And so, like you said, I'm just trying to raise awareness so people aren't a deer in the headlights. If or when something like this plays out, they're going to be able to operate within it more efficiently because they've listened to people like you or like me that have actually said it in a way that makes sense. Sometimes we got to slap people in the face with some cold, hard facts and get them to wake up. And I've woken up a lot of people, I believe. Now, the $1 million question is crash or no crash. You have to put a percentage of likely. You do, I do. Everybody has to come in with their own percentage of likelihood and then prepare accordingly. I threw caution to the wind in '08 for the most part. This time I'm going a different route. I'm going to prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and hopefully come out somewhere in the middle. It's better to be prepared for something and have it not happen than have something happen and not be prepared. Insulate yourself, have a little cash reserves. If you can diversify it a little bit, great. If not, just make sure you have a cushion. You're not living paycheck to paycheck, which is going to be hard because many people are finding themselves doing exactly that right now, which again will be bad for the moto industry. It was bad in '08 for the moto industry. Sponsors shrank back, companies went out of business. It was gnarly. It trickles into everything. So this is cool times to be a part of, like you said, because if you halfway saw this comment, you're not going to be a deer in the headlights. You're going to be able to operate within this. For me, I live it's a simple thing in life I do now. I don't spend more money than I make. There it is.
A novel idea.
I know. Insane.
And people got to read up on the business cycle. You've mentioned a couple times the business cycle, which is the boom and bust cycle. I just went through a business degree at my local community college. It's amazing the things that they don't teach you. I got lucky and got into libertarian politics and Austrian economics before COVID. So I was pretty primed for this stuff to happen. It's like, oh, look at all the things that they were saying is going to happen is now happening. And man, the business cycle is such a big deal to understand. And even when I went to college, they were like, first off, my microeconomics class was taught by a socialist, which makes a whole lot of sense. But they basically just go, oh, yeah, here's the business cycle. This is what it is. And let's move on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, man, you got to know when I've got buddies who are starting businesses right now. And it's like, dude, this is not the time. This is not the time.
The best time when I started MotoStar, it was in a recession, like deep, like the best time. If you can get your company to stand on its own 2 feet in recessionary times, when you get to healthier times, you're going to be cash flowing hard. So the best time to launch, a lot of people say, is in an actual recession, not a boom cycle. I saw many companies fail in the last boom that grew too big. They continued to just overcommit, over leverage. And then as soon as a shrinking of the economy came, they started throwing people overboard. We're already getting reports of layoffs sweeping the white collar tech industry. You can get a blue collar job right now. You can go in the service sector. Those jobs are available. Those are our job numbers. But the white collar jobs, a lot of them are now doing layoffs. And so those were the companies that boomed in the lockdown environment. And then the service sector got squashed in lockdowns. Now the flip has occurred. We're reopening. So those white collar jobs are now reducing, and then the service sector jobs are expanding. So, we got to let this shake out. The dust got to settle. We will pay the piper for stimulus, and there will be some blowback. We now have to monitor and temperature check how deep it's going to reach. Will bailouts be enough? And, you know, how's this thing shake out? It's going to come. We can't dodge a bullet on this one. We overheated the biggest economy in the world, the US economy. And that just isn't going to go without some repercussions. And the fact that we did a complete money dump in the form of doubling the amount of money through stimulus in circulation, our debt sheet is now mathematically impossible to ever balance again. We'll be a debtor nation forever. I mean, there's a lot of things now that you have to understand, that it's not all rainbows and sunshine just because you have your masks off, man. You've got to let this thing shake out. And we're just at the tail end of a crisis, the front end of a recession that hasn't even been officially announced yet, but we see the cost of living skyrocketing. We know we're in recessionary times. It's just for whatever reason hasn't been announced, because if it is announced officially, then people are going to really start to recess, and we're going to see this thing really start to, you know, move towards that. And so super interesting times, exciting times. If you can acknowledge the elephant in the room, the first step of getting past the problem, just admit there's a problem, and then maybe you have a chance. But if you're in denial, saying no problem here, this time is different, you know, you might get a little bit of a shock the way I did in '08. That's all. And it's my job to continue to raise awareness and ring the bell and let people know that, you know, don't let your insides be measured by other people's outsides. You don't have to drive a Tesla. You don't have to live in this certain house. You don't have to have all that to be happy. In fact, it won't make you happy anyway. At the end of the day, you'll just be a debt slave, and that stuff's you're not gonna own it. It's just gonna own you. I sell houses to people all day, every day, and they don't own their houses. Their houses own them, for what I just, you know, communicated to you. And I know what that's like, because when I bought my house, I was remodeling all the time. Now I don't care less about my house. I want to go hit the beach and go ride motos. Like, as long as I got enough money to do that, I'll live in a cracker box temporarily, stack cash and ride off into the sunset later. Sacrifice now, ride off into the sunset later. Everybody wants to look rich now. I want to be rich now. No, so you're getting the cart in front of the horse. But it's just human nature. It's the way, you know, we kind of operate on the human level. But if I can bring one person down to earth and just at least let them understand those things, and hear somebody talk about things they may have thought and nobody had the guts to say, then I'll keep running my mouth. And then, you know, YouTube's great, because I've always been of the mindset I could walk away from YouTube. I'm not a full-time YouTuber. You know, it's like, it's just funny money for me. And I do it because I love it. I do it for free. I started doing it for free when I first started. So, you know, as long as you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And that's been my story up until, you know, currently.
And, you know, helping people's good. It feels good. I was an AA guy for a long time, not so much anymore. But the whole basis of that program is helping people makes you feel good. So do more of it. And I can't imagine how it feels to get somebody into a house that they can afford to, you know, raise a family in and just have a good life.
Or
you know,
how about this? As a salesman, biggest commissions you'll ever make selling houses, right? That's the biggest purchase people make in their lives. So I live in the $1 Million District, so it's cutthroat here. It's an episode of $1 Million Listing, very superficial. It's gross. But I work for the biggest brokerage in the world as well. And I enjoy the capacity in which I function now as a real estate professional. I own and operate mixed-use commercial property. I'm a licensed real estate agent. I do a big referral network all over the nation with helping people get into the hands of top agents. It's very satisfying. And like you said, I'm over 20 years. I've been over 20 years since I've had a drink, right? So I've crashed and burned, you know, in life before. And then I had to have that moment of clarity where I say, you know, I got to change. And so, like you said, now my job is to be of service. Some days I'm more effective than others. I don't always come flying out of bed in the mornings ready to go find the next person that needs help. You know, but at the end of the day, you're right. You know, if we put others' needs before our own, especially as a real estate agent, I've told people, hey, listen, let's wait. You know, I know you got a pre-approval letter that says I can take you shopping, but I think maybe we should wait, I'll earn your business later if you want to sit this thing out and see how this thing shakes out. And that's really rare. You're going to find anybody in sales, much less a real estate agent, say those words. What? You'll earn my business later? Like most people are, we get trained weekly sales meetings, how to get people to buy now, not later. I mean, and so for me, it just depends. I'm just going to look at, hey, how much you putting down? What's your mortgage payment? Just as a security measure, let's check its rent range because something happens to your job. I want to make sure you don't lose the house. You can dump a renter in there and you can go figure things out, some cracker box somewhere, and not lose the home and move back into it later when you get back on your feet. And no agent ever says that because they just limited their buying pool if they did, because that's not going to be the case for a lot of properties. And so if your properties don't pencil out to, your payment is above its rent range, you better hope this time is different and nothing changes, because if you can't rent your house for your payment, you're losing it. Those are just the hard facts. So, you got to now come in swinging, put enough money down on the property, save up more money. So you come in with a down payment that puts it within its rent range if you're carrying a payment. That's the only thing I wish I'd done in '08. I'd still have that property today. But I learned an important lesson. I don't regret it now because of what I've learned. So I don't want to go do the same thing over expecting a different result. That would be a definition of insanity. But in this time, that's one of the main things I look at. If I'm buying a property, and I'm carrying a mortgage, it's got to be below its rent range. So I know I sleep better at night. I pulled an insurance policy for myself. If something happens to me or my income, renter goes in, I don't lose the house.
Sustainability. I'm all about sustainability. How can I sustain my life without being dependent on other people?
Yeah, brother.
And I recently just remodeled a room in my house. So I've got no more dining room. I've got another master, essentially, bedroom. So I'm renting 3 rooms out in the house. My bills are covered and I'm able to do this and talk to great people like you. And, hopefully we're going to move the needle a little bit and we won't own nothing and be happy at some point.
Yeah, we might be the few, the strong, the brave that are able to go out there and make sure that we don't end up a statistic. And with that being said, man, I got to run, but I want to thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, I
was just going to call it.
We'll talk more. Maybe we can do this once a month or once a week, because
absolutely,
iron sharpens iron. I mean, I could go all day with you, and that's always a good sign of synergy.
Yep.
And man,
I didn't even get to any of my questions.
I know.
I
so
had
now
20 questions written down, and I didn't ask any of them.
Let's just stamp it. Next week, let's do this again.
Perfect. All right. Sounds good, Walty.
All right, my
Talk
brother.
to you later.
I'll talk to you
Everybody have a good night.